Alright folks, so in today's video we're going to take a look at a small amplifier from Radioddity. It's the PAX100 and it's supposed to be able to deliver up to 100 watts and it's for use with Xiegue radios. We're going to take a look at it with the Xiegue or Xiegu, depending upon where you're from, G90. But before we get started, I wanted to mention that down here there's a couple of buttons, a like button, subscribe button, share button. Go ahead and click on them. It'll make you happy. So here is the Radioddity PAX100, and I wanted to mention that Radioddity did send this device to me free of charge in exchange for this video review. Let's take a quick look. You can see it has a DC 12 volt input, and then it has a port to control your push to talk. And we'll take a look at the cable that's used for this in a few minutes. It has your input and output signaling via SMA connectors. And here's where it's labeled as a PAX100. I believe they also sell this as a kit that you can build yourself, but this came pre-assembled. It has a cooling fan on the back, and it looks like most of the components are built on a giant heat sink. Now here you can see the screws for the fan. I'm not sure I've ever seen that particular mounting option before. But generally it looks well constructed and seems like it's pretty durable. It comes with a series of cables. Now here's the push-to-talk control that I mentioned earlier, and it uses this DIN connector, which goes into the back of the G90. And this is what plugs into the PAX. It comes with two coaxial jumpers. These are for getting your signal in and out of the PAX100. They seem well constructed. And then it also comes with this power cord. And it just connects right there. And I took some time to put some Anderson power poles on the other side so it works with the rest of my power options in my ham shack. It also comes with two fuses. These are 15 amp fuses. And the fuse that is in the power cable housing is also a 15 amp fuse. So here we are at the Radioddity website, and we're going to take a look at the listing for the PAX100, and then we're also going to take a look at the online instruction manual or product manual. Here you can scroll down and see under new arrivals. It is selling, it looks like, for $159.99 on sale right now. One thing I'll mention is that it does have an option to pick up a low-pass filter. Some of the things I've heard about this particular radio, and somewhat experienced myself, is that it's a little bit noisy, so the addition of the low-pass filter, which I do not have, might clear up your signal. Here's the installation guidance, as they call it, but it shows you how to set up the amplifier in your configuration. Also, there are some things here that you need to take note of. You need to have your antenna tuner off when using this particular product. Also, you need to use a resonant antenna, and anything above a 1.5 SWR could potentially damage your PAX100 and require it to be repaired. I should also mention the Xiegu or Xiegue I think it's 5051. It's a QRP radio as well. Can take advantage of this amplifier. Here's some specifications, some warnings, and some additional information. Again, they review the installation guidance. And there's a little bit of a Q&A down at the bottom. I'll include this link below. At the bottom of the page, you have the option to click on the user manual. And that takes you to a new support page. It's easy to find. And here it goes over the same information that we saw before, basically the conditions of operations. It'll go over the parts and things that you need, and it will also show some diagrams or images of the installation. Okay, now I'm going to set this thing up, and then we can see how it works out. We are going to use the MFJ 894 SWR and watt meter to do these tests. And we're also going to be transmitting into a dummy load, which gives me a 1-to-1 SWR, which should give me the most accurate readings. You can see here that I have set up the PAX100 in accordance with the installation instructions. For this test, we want to make sure that our tuner is off, and then we are going to do 10, 20, 40, 80, and 160 meters. First on 5 watts and then on 8 watts.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
So you can see there we hit about 30 to 35 watts out. That likely would go up higher if we drive it more. So let's go ahead and we will test on 8 watts and see what happens. Pay attention to the power supply.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And it looks like we are closer to 40. But looking at the power supply, you can see the amperage or current draw required by the PAX100. The radio itself is being powered off of a bio-NO lithium-ion battery.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
So it looks like we hit about 60 watts on the 20 meter band. Now let's go up to 8 watts.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And we were probably averaging around 65. Now we are going to go up to the 40 meter band.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And I want to say we are bouncing around 75 to 80. Now let's do the test on 8 watts. If I can remember how to work this radio.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And that looks like we are bouncing between 80 and 85. Now we are going to go to the 80 meter band. And we want to set our radio to an appropriate frequency. And we also want to make sure that we are operating again on 5 watts for the initial test. The amp itself is pretty quiet. You'll notice that you cannot hear it in the recording, which is a nice thing.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And we were hanging around 85 to 90 watts. Now let's drive it with 8.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And I would say that we were probably averaging somewhere around 90 watts there. Now, if you watch the power supply, we come nowhere close to 20 amps, which is what the instructions said you needed to supply to the PAX100. Maybe if I was driving it at 10 watts, that would be true. But what I find odd is the fuses that came with the device are all rated at 15 amps. So if it needs 20, why would it have 15 amp fuses? That's something that I do not have a clean answer for. All right, let's go ahead and do a test on 160. And we are only going to attempt 5 watts as the instruction manual says not to go above that.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
And that actually looked like we were averaging around 110 watts.
Test, test, test. We are doing a test.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about digital modes. And if you want to see how I do digital modes, check out my video FT8 with the Xiegu G90. But you can see the white cable plugs into the DIN port on the back of the G90 and then into the PAX100. Now I use that output, that DIN port, for audio in and audio out. You may be able to overcome this with the CE19 adapter that Xiegue or Radioddity sells, but I don't use that device. I just use a cable that goes into the DIN port and then into a sound card interface. And then I use the cat control port on the head of the G90 for my push-to-talk function. You might be able to wrangle or finagle something, but for me, this is a complexity as I'm mostly a digital operator, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to deal with that. So maybe there'll be a video in the future on digital modes with the PAX100. I don't know. I probably would just use it for single sideband or phone type communications. Also, experienced by myself and reported by other people, there is some noise, there is some static, some interference on the output of this device. So you may really want to consider looking at a low-pass filter option that Radioddity sells if you decide to pick up this device. This is the part where I thank everybody for watching, and I thank Radioddity for sending me the PAX100 for my consideration. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or recommendations, go ahead and post them below, and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate it. Take care.